So, yeah, I'm ApeJunk, and I got into this game from playing with Sam. Basically, we decided to start playing this game together at the same time. But she is the one with all the backstory and lore of playing the first game. I've gone back and played a little bit of it, but I haven't gotten very far because we spend most of our time in this game.
And I'm Sam, short for Samaelle. We'll just go with that. I've been playing Guild Wars for 4 years. We started together, and yeah, I was there for, I want to say factions is when I started, but I started with Prophecies, factions, Nightfall, Eye of the North, all that fun stuff. So my Hall of Monuments looks a little bit better than his.
And just for anybody who's listening who does not know what a Hall of Monuments is, it is basically a museum of your achievements and accomplishments in Guild Wars 1.
That is correct. You can tie the two games together account-wise, and you get credit from the first Guild Wars in this game. It's pretty wild.
So you've already kind of answered what brought you to Guild Wars 2, because you wanted to start playing a game, and I expect that Sam's previous experience with Guild Wars 1, did that tie into, like, saying that you wanted to jump into it, or at least bring Ape into playing it as well?
Yeah. So I had wanted to play Guild Wars 2 when it came out, but, you know, some stuff got in the way life-wise, and I wasn't able to start it right then and there. And then it just kind of fell by the wayside until we were looking at an MMO, and I just kind of mentioned, you know, this one's one I've kind of had my eye on for a long time now. So we jumped in just before, or right after Heart of Thorns dropped, years ago.
So I'm curious about people's names, because it is a big part of the way that people embody themselves and how they enter games. So can you tell me how you came up with your character names? We have a visitor.
Yeah, I'll go first. Mine's very short. In the early 2000s, maybe 2001, one of my friends had gotten the original Xbox, and we were going to play something online through it, and I had to make an account. And I did not have a gamer name picked out, so I just went ahead and hit the auto-generate, and ApeJunk was the first thing that came up. And we laughed and laughed and laughed, and then I selected it, and I've been using it ever since.
It is memorable. Well, how about you, Sam?
Yeah, so Samaelle Sin came about. That was actually the name of my very first Guild Wars 1 character as well. I think I was in my early 20s, and I was like super into like demonology and fallen angels and things like that. And Samaelle, of course, is also Lucifer, also Satan. And I thought that was super edgy and cool. And then I just tacked on the ELLE. I just figured, you know, letting people call me Sam to begin with would not be confusing whatsoever. And Sin is kind of something that you tack on at the end of a word. Oh, there's a word for that.
Suffix?
But it's in a Nahuatl. So the Aztecs would denominate themselves, you know, if they were royalty, they would put on the Sin at the end of their name. And I just started using it as like a quote unquote last name.
Awesome. So
Very different stories.
yes, well, and very interesting. I'm very interested. I like to bring that out because one of the things that we see in MMOs and etc. is that it's a form of expression, like from the way that you create your character, how you name them, that sort of thing. And that brings me to my next question, which is, what is your external video game experience? With MMOs, what other MMOs have both of you played? Is a curiosity.
Well, I actually started out with WoW. The same friend I was with when I came up with the ApeJunk name. I had explained I was looking for a game that played in a certain way. and this friend had already been playing WoW, so for that Christmas, he decided to buy me a beginning subscription. And this was in the mid 2000s. And I played that game for a long time, at least 6 years. And that's how I got started in it.
Yeah, my
Go ahead,
only
Sam.
MMO is going to be Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2. Although Guild Wars 1 isn't really an MMO, it doesn't play the same way. So maybe Guild Wars 2 is my very first and only MMO. I've tried ESO. I liked it well enough, but I was already kind of focused on Guild Wars and, working on achievements there and didn't want to spend my time elsewhere.
So if I were to put it somewhere, Guild Wars 1 is on the MMO spectrum. It's just more yellow than anything else because... So anybody listening, in order to understand why I would put it there, is that Guild Wars 1 is instanced-based. Instead of an open, persistent world that you interact with like Guild Wars 2 has, or World of Warcraft, you are stuck in sort of a lobby, and then from that lobby you go places. And those places don't have people in them that you don't bring with you. And so in that sort of vein, it's less of a giant, massively multiplayer, persistent world. But it does have a certain amount of persistence where you can see other people with lobbies. But it's more of an MMO light than it is like a straight up a big MMO, because it's from an era when the massively multiplayer part was much more difficult to actually do. I'm very curious, of course, both of you. How would you say your previous MMO experience informed your experience in Guild Wars 2? Like with Ape, so World of Warcraft is a fantasy MMORPG style game, and it has character classes and etc. What was your main, I think, is where I'm starting from there, and did that inform what you started playing in Guild Wars 2?
Yeah, there was a direct translation, actually. I mostly played Necro in World of Warcraft, and I pretty much stuck with that. I did try all the other classes out of interest, but that Necro was definitely a strong main. That's like what I was on most of the time. And when I started Guild Wars 2, I basically kind of just started making a character like that. It was almost like a imitation. I even was gonna try using the same name, but it was taken, so I made something new. So yeah, there was kind of just a transition of that same basis into this game with the whole necromancer thing.
And I also mained a necromancer in Guild Wars 1. I knew that I didn't want to start off with another one in this game, because I actually still have the magazine when Guild Wars 2 was announced. And they told you there was going to be a thief class. And from way back then, I thought, you know what, my first one is going to be a thief, and it's going to be a Norn, because that was also revealed back then. So
A huge thief.
yeah,
Yeah.
it did not make sense that there's no way Norn's going to be able to be too stealthy. But whatever.
That's why she made a smaller Norn. But I'll also point out that she was really big into the Assassin's Creed game series and really liked that gameplay.
So on the subject of characters, could both of you tell me a little bit about the character that you're currently playing and how you chose to put together the outfit, and then maybe what class it is and why, like what your experience playing it is?
Let's see. Outfit, I kind of because they added in the whole template thing. I now have, and I'm gonna scroll through these. So we're looking at my my PvP suit right now, or my power suit. I do like the hollow shoulders a lot, so I think they're on 2 of the 3. But the first one I put together, my first Ascended set, was oh, you know what? I can't switch to it because I'm holding my gramophone. Alright. Here we go. This was my Viper set, and it's the War Beast look. And I just like that blue and yellow combo. And then I have this oddball one, a Plague Doctor set that I haven't even put into effect. That's similar but has different shoulders with like a kind of steely purple and lit purple look.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. So let's see. So you were asking about outfits. What was the other part?
Class. Sorry, I'll try to stay away from complex multi-part questions, but this one is all
Sure.
about the character you're currently playing. So everything you can tell me about this character will
So
do.
perhaps how I got into playing NG.
Yes, and also
Yeah.
before we go on too far, can you describe to people what you mean when you say things like Viper and Plague Doctor so that there's a little bit more context?
Yes, they are stat builds. So all of the armor pieces, for example, like in my power suit here, this is a Berserker's build. It's power mostly, and precision and ferocity. And this one here, Viper, is mostly power and condition damage. And then the lessers are precision and expertise, which means that condition damage lasts longer. And then Plague Doctor is mostly vitality and condition damage with a minor of healing power and concentration, which makes booms last longer.
And just so that everyone knows, a lot of these terms have to do with combat, which is a really large component of Guild Wars 2 gameplay. Power is mostly direct damage, and it also affects any other type of damage, whereas condition is things like lighting people on fire or poisoning them, and etc. And your stats directly affect, like as in any other video game, it directly affects how you engage in combat. So can you talk a little bit about the class and like why you chose it and like your experience as like maybe compared to World of Warcraft, because that's your previous experience?
Yeah, actually, I think it directly ties in with my decision to do this, which is kind of funny and probably rather short, really. Sam and I, when we were playing on our first two characters that we made, came across a little map heart event in which you use grenades.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately went, "There's grenades in this game?" And proceeded to, I think at the end of that session, log off and make an engineer, which has become my main.
Okay, I think it's your turn,
Moving on to
Sam.
me.
Yes, let me center you. All right.
So I guess starting off with the look, I kind of feel like I stick to a basic look with this. I really like the trench coat outfit
Yes.
thingy, so it is in both on my main power and my high crit damage set, and the other one is just a condition build, which I don't use a lot, but I still thought, why not match it to the legendary that I got for myself,
Oh, the tiger.
Yes.
Bow.
Yeah, the
Chupa
tiger bow,
Chomp one.
got
Yeah.
some cool colors. So I went with just matching it. That's kind of what I do with these. It turns out is as soon as I get a very cool weapon, I'll just go ahead and match the weapon to my outfit. And there was actually a meme on the Guild Wars 2 subreddit about that, and I was like, I do that.
Fashion Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as to, I think I went over why I chose Thief. I wanted to, since I heard it was going to be thrown in there. But I love it. I mean, it's exactly what I wanted. It's, pretty fast-paced damage, a lot of being sneaking. And, the specializations have actually changed up the feel of the fight a lot. So right now I'm running with the kind of a high agility, pretty bursty Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
But I do occasionally swap over to the Deadeye, which has the sniper rifle.
Can you give a little bit of a background on what the terms Deadeye and Daredevil mean in this context?
It's just the style of gameplay that's still tied to your class. So you're still a thief, but whereas with the normal thief, you only have access to guns and daggers and a couple of other weapons. Daredevil gives you a new weapon to play with, which kind of gets you as more of a melee beater with lots of cleave. And the Deadeye lets you use a rifle, which is pretty high damage, but only to a single target.
Also, one of the things that I couldn't help but notice is that you have another legendary equipped, and I think I remember. I don't remember if I recall when you created at least one part of it. Yes, the strange rotating orbs. Can you tell people about that a little bit? Like, what's going on there?
Oh my goodness! So, these are. I don't want to say relatively new legendaries because I think the first one came out with Heart of Thorns, or maybe a little bit after. But that is, let me see, their names are Aurora and Vision. And when you only have one equipped, let me see. Right, the effect is different. That's for a single one. And I think there's 3 of them that all kind of interplay together. And I just wanted a cool effect on me.
And it works, actually.
This means you did a lot of work, at least. And there's a 3rd one that interplays with it a little bit more. And that person has 3 legendary accessories.
Yeah, it's kind of neat that they give you the visual cue for that.
I love that. One of the interesting things about choosing a public space in a massively multiplayer online game is that you get to see visitors come by.
Oh yeah.
So, what do you two do in a normal day in Guild Wars 2?
Well, it could be a wide variety of things because there's so many game types. I know Samaelle likes to focus on achievements. I would say she probably does most of them on her own, but occasionally we'll do some of them together. Sometimes it's a matter of deciding whether we're going to be player versus player, or if there's a world event going on and we're going to do that. Or we need, say, something like the Gift of Battle, and we're going to be in World versus World for a week long. So it really changes all the time, and with that being said, it kind of keeps it fresh.
Yeah, I think prior to streaming, we were focusing a lot more in PvE. I don't think we were running out of things to do because episodes keep dropping. And there's always, new weapons that's to be crafted and achievements to be earned. But as soon as we started streaming, we definitely had that urge of providing different content and not just PvE all the time. So that's really kind of pushed us to trying out all the different modes. Even, we were not considering raids before we started streaming, but we realized, this is actually something that could be, it would be cool to see our progression. And getting our characters that we've been playing for 4 years and we still haven't rated, to see people jumping into that space and maybe even bringing some of the chat along with us.
Yeah, that really brings me into a side question that's directly related. So you two came into Guild Wars 2 approximately 4 years ago, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But you only started streaming only about a month and maybe a week or a month and a half ago. How has that changed your experience in playing the game?
Well, interestingly enough, it's mostly only changed it while we are streaming. But, meeting some other players online has allowed us to get into some things we weren't normally doing. Like, we rarely did fractals, now we're doing those a lot more. We hadn't tried strike missions, so now we're starting to get into those. Those are probably the 2 biggest examples. And then the whole idea of us just even trying to focus on learning skill rotations for practicing to potentially do a raid or something.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping my playtime to only the stream, just because I'm the kind of person that would probably get burnt out on it if I'm on Guild Wars, 24/7. I keep a little bit of variety in my day, and stepping away from it is nice, and not feeling like he's getting too far ahead of me is super nice. If he decides to play. But we do play separately once in a while.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of playing off stream during the day, and I will occasionally meet up with some of the other Twitch streamers or players that we've met up with from streaming occasionally to do some things. So that's, pretty new, actually.
So now that you've been playing Guild Wars for like 4 years, how did you learn to play your class or the game itself the way that you currently play? And I'm like looking for, I'm sure Sam's going to be really big on this one. Like, what kind of resources do you consult, and how much of the game do you feel that you've experienced?
You want to go first, Sam?
Oh, I thought we were sticking to a.
All right, I'll go first. I would say for me, I really don't use a lot of guides. I've done a lot of experimentation on my own. I also got very much into the crafting system, and I'm always making new armor sets to try out different builds, and then just go out into the world and test them out. So I learned later that there are sites that have these builds on them that can be aimed for one that's designed very well for PvP, or one that's designed very well for raids, or one that's designed for roaming in world versus world, or running with a group in world versus world. I've only more recently started trying some of those, but I find that sometimes they don't make much sense. So I'll try them and then maybe tweak them for how I like to play. Otherwise, I'm just doing experimentation completely on my own to see how effective it is.
As to how I play the game and all the resources I use, I know you were laughing because while we're on stream, I'm usually the one that like alt tabs out and has 7 Chrome tags open to reference. When people have a question, I definitely like to share all those tools. Guild Wars efficiency being probably one of the top one, and the wiki is one that I always recommend to people because it is just a repository of all the information ever. And I think I started visiting it exactly because I was doing all those achievements. I probably was using Dolphy, and she writes guides on how to get these achievements. Essentially, she's taken a break over the last year or so. So now the wiki's my main resource for any question that I might have about the game, or if somebody's considered, an aspect of, a weapon or whatever. And as to builds, I usually, like my skills and my traits, I think I've stuck to what I have figured out for myself, just because I know how to play that. This is currently a meta build. But because I was playing Thief for a while, I kind of just understood what all the traits were meant to do and how they were going to synergize and what to use, my utility skills for. Yeah. And I guess we do run key farmers every week so that we're kind of learning a different aspect of some other class, over and over and over again. So I force myself to use a different build just about every time. Maybe focus on elementalist glyphs and see what traits are going to benefit those and try to run through early game with all of that.
Could you briefly describe for people listening what you mean when you say meta build?
It is a build that is understood by the community to be the most efficient at a certain task. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that outlines it pretty well. In my understanding that a meta build is pretty much the consensus in the community based on a particular goal. Like you said, if you want to do obscene amounts of damage, then there are specific setups that you'll want to go with. If you want to survive really well, there's specific setups you want to go with, and these are considered meta because they they take the rules of the game and they try to bend them as much as possible to a very specific goal.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to have. Could you also explain what a key farmer is for anyone that's listening?
Yeah. So let me see. There are, loot boxes like in any game, well, most games, I think, at this point, and you need a Black Lion key to open them. Normally, those keys are available in the Black Lion gem store, so you pay with real money or convert your your gold to gems. But once a week, you are eligible for a free one if you just run any character up through level 10 story. So it's a really nice thing for ArenaNet to do that, to allow us to have free keys and not have to, feel like we need to fork over money for them. I mean, I still support them a lot, but if I don't have to buy keys, I don't feel like I need to.
Right. And it is kind of nice that they have set it up where even though you can buy certain things with real world money, they often have a way for you to work for it in game as well. So it's kind of, you get to choose.
So, what would you say the temperature of the MMO community is like in Guild Wars 2? Such as, like, how do other people generally behave?
I would say my experience here has been that people are generally pretty helpful. I guess in the more competitive game types, you'll see a little bit more of that saltiness that people are referring to. But I don't know. Out in the world, out and about for, say, world events and all that, it seems like, people are picking each other up and being supportive. And a lot of times if somebody poses a question out in map chat, somebody, may answer it humorously and ridiculously, but a lot of the times they're actually just giving the right answer and pointing somebody in the right direction. So it's pretty supportive, I would say.
It's funny because one of the times that we were running those early stories, early maps on a key farmer, there was somebody asking a question in map chat, and everybody, maybe 2 or 3 people in map chat all answered the same thing. And this person just says, "Ha ha, very funny, guys," and he started getting really angry. Because he thought we were trying to trick him into something. And finally, he tried it out and he apologized to everybody. He said, "I'm so sorry. I come from this other MMO where people are not anywhere near helpful. The veterans will either not share their knowledge or they'll come up and just, because you've now given away your location, they're going to come up and kill you."
Oh, wow. Did they say what?
Yeah, because the events, force you to cooperate. They force you to kind of organize just a little bit. Octovine meta, you can't do that without people calling things out in map chat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it changes people's, the way that they're going to interact with each other. They're going to be a little bit nicer to each other and hopefully more helpful.
Did they say what MMO that they were from?
I did, but I didn't want to say it.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I'm not about to drag another MMO's community through the mud.
Well, some of them are a little bit muddy. I mean, it's part of the experience, which is why I asked this question.
Right.
What was the thing that they needed to know that they thought people were joking about?
I think it was how to get to like a point of interest or something. And it was one of those that was a little convoluted, but it wasn't that far off. And it was just the fact that it was their first reaction to explode and think that the community was trying to trick him was really telling. But he calmed down. Or she.
Okay, so I know the answer to this question is probably going to be a little bit like mixed. For everybody watching, you can see Ape's and Sam's character names above their heads, and there's a word in brackets. And that is that's their guild tag that they're displaying. One of the interesting things about Guild Wars is that you can be in 5 different guilds at the same time, but you can represent one, which gives you the tag, which, interestingly enough, the tags themselves have been used as a sort of fashion, which is why I'm bringing this up. The question, of course, is, do you have a guild in the or a community in Guild Wars 2? And do you talk to them outside of Guild Wars 2? But so I'm curious about one, metal, and two, if you have another guild that you're part of, or what that's like right now. So go ahead, Ape.
Well, actually, I mean, the story about the metal tag is more Samaelle's story. She saw it in game and tried to track somebody down because we wanted it. We're both fans of metal music, and the metal tag is super cool to us, of course. The name of the guild, the whole name being the Ancient Guardians of Metal, which is very metal. So yeah, we do kind of rock this tag as like, yeah, we're so there's not a lot of active players in the guild anymore. I think it was an old guild, and they did a lot of work because the guild hall is pretty well decked out, and the remaining players seem to mostly focus on world versus world play. But because we don't play on the same server as them, we don't get to play with them very often. I actually did join in yesterday because our two servers are matched up to play together in world versus world. But yeah, other than that, we're pretty much rocking this tag because, well, I'll be honest, the guild hall's well decked out, and we get to harvest stuff from it daily. But we just like having this tag.
We do belong to a couple of other guilds. We have just a guild where it's just the two of us that I don't know, after seeing all the work involved in getting a guild hall and all that stuff, maybe not.
We're just holding on to it. If we do get the right group of people together, maybe we'll start launching our own guild. We're a part of this guild called the Mist Fighters, who I actually met out on my first Heart of Thorns map, and they were pushing to get a guild hall, and they didn't have enough people. And I roped Samaelle in, and we both helped them get the guild hall, and we ran with them for a while. And that has become completely inactive in the last couple of years.
Right, and then just recently we came into a female assassins guild, and I think when it comes to talking to people, in game and outside of game, it's probably the most active guild I've seen on chat.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess just earlier, I guess we were still in game, but it's the first time that I've interacted with people in Discord to try to get something done. That was fun.
Yeah, so we just recently met the crew guild, from watching Twitch and what's going on. And we were just running a guild mission in PvP earlier with them, trying to help out. And it was fun.
Awesome. So, my last question for you two, straight up, is what is your favorite memory or experience from playing Guild Wars 2?
Ooh. Okay. I think it would have been on our first characters. We were running around, and you go into Fields of Ruin. And there is Ebonhawk, Stronghold of Ebonhawk. And in Ebonhawk, there is a cemetery. And one of the main headstones is Gwen. And I remember actually getting a little bit teared up and nostalgic. But that's definitely like something that brought me home right away.
Yeah, that whole Guild Wars 1 connection. The lore does carry through here.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the headstone and the character that it represents?
So Gwen, in the very beginning of Guild Wars 1, Gwen is a little girl whom you meet and you play. The searing happens, you lose track of her. You don't know whether she's dead or alive. I don't know if there's any clues to it. You just don't hear about her again. And then she is reintroduced, years later in Eye of the North as a young woman. And of course, I mean, the story goes on. But you obviously don't hear too much. This is hundreds of years later in Guild Wars 2, so I wasn't expecting any sort of a character tie-in to it. I think it made sense that it's a Stone Summit, or not the Stone Summit, sorry, the dwarf in the Priory. That one made sense. But anybody else that was mortal, essentially, I wasn't expecting to see any kind of callback to them. So that was very cool for them to bring her back in here.
How about you, Ape?
Oh, mine are more fleeting and stupid. But so the first one would be when I was rolling around on my first character on the Necro and discovered that there were grenades in the game. I just went, ooh, right. Grenades! Because it just led me right to this character here. And another one was we were rolling around in one of the Heart of Thorns maps one day in a map called the Tangled Depths, which is notoriously difficult to navigate just by map alone because it goes underground, it goes way high up into the air, it goes, there's so much depth to it that when you look at a flat overhead map you can't figure out where you're going. And we were out there one day while somebody was obviously getting very frustrated by this. And they were, saying basically, I'm standing right on the point and nothing's here. I can't find it. And they were just flustered and enraging. And they finally just came out with, everyone at ANET is an idiot. And this is a joke that we will say to each other just to make each other laugh because it was so ridiculous.
When anything goes wrong around the house, whenever the dog is being ridiculous, that is our go-to. It's just everyone at ANET is an idiot because it doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, I'm gonna do two things right now. I'm gonna switch over to the social section of this, and that means that anybody in chat, if you have questions for Ape and Sam, there we go. You will be able to ask them, and I will pass them along. And since this is the tail end of the interview, Ape and Sam, do you have any questions for me before we run off?
Oh, I do. Sam, do you have any?
I think one of mine was one of the ones that we had written down. Do I go first?
Yeah, sure. I have a short list here. So, how many of these interviews have you done so far?
Ones that I have recorded and then released to people, or in general?
I suppose so, yeah.
Okay, so out of the ones that I've recorded and released to people, it's probably mounting on probably about 50.
That's pretty good. Pretty good collection there.
Mm-hmm.
How did your interest in general anthropology and gaming come together?
Well, I mean, I started out my life as a gamer, and I really liked... I've really enjoyed the concept of virtual life worlds. The idea of not just interactive fiction, like the whole choose your own adventure book, but made live, like alive. But also the different type of human interaction that you get about witnessing someone who has embodied themselves in a way that's different than that they get to do in their real life. So in real life, we put on clothes, we put on makeup, we cut our hair, we might tattoo ourselves, and we change our bodies as a form of expression. But in an MMO, our expression is ultimately protean. It is extremely malleable, and the rules of our world are variant. And so I got into anthropology because I liked people a lot, and I liked folklore. In fact, I wanted to be a folklorist, which is why I love when people are really into lore in games, because lore is kind of a constructive folklore that's already built into the game, but players themselves create their own sort of folklore about the game that's just added onto it, that's like the human layer, because you might have like constructive cultures of, say, in Guild Wars 2, there might be stories about the Char or about the Norn or whatever, but once the players themselves enter the life world, you also get people who can walk to a particular area and say, oh, I know this place because, this represents where the Char are in the world. But I also have this experience with my guild where we had this massive battle, like with another guild or with a world boss or whatever, and that adds another human layer on top of what was built by the devs. And that's the sort of thing that I want to record and parlay to people who are otherwise not experienced in like the life worlds of MMOs and etc. So
yeah, I get that too, in the sense that I know when I was younger and playing games, I had a lot of imagination based around the character and the world it was moving in that kind of filled in the gaps, even beyond whatever lore and storyline might have been created. And I would say I do less of that now. Like, it's more object oriented, but occasionally when I play late night by myself, I kind of get back into that idea. I kind of like doing that from time to time.
So before we get on to Sam's question, let me pass along something that Face Tat Fish said. Question from Anonymous.
Hey, it's Face Tat.
If you got a free server transfer, who would you give it to, with a wink from Anonymous viewer?
We would obviously give it to Face Tat Fish.
We'll campaign for you, Face Tat, to get you a free server transfer from ArenaNet.
Yeah.
Okay, he says, here's a real question. What was the hardest achievement to achieve between the both of you? That's a great one.
Yeah, let's see.
We're still working on the one that he's marked at the top, which is the War Eternal Mastery.
All right.
It's supposed to be easy, but we haven't gotten to it.
That would actually be a fun one to broadcast, because it's basically a giant dragon fight while you ride on another smaller dragon. And yeah, we have not achieved this one, so that might actually be a fun one to actually broadcast. We've tried it a few times and have not figured out how to pull it off quite yet. Of course, we haven't watched any videos on it either, but it might be more fun to just try and try.
Oh, it's getting dark in this map.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Becoming nighttime. You can see more of the starry sky above.
Yeah,
Telescope.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
okay.
I really like the night sky out here.
It is your turn, Sam.
Yeah, okay. And I think this was one of the ones that was written down. So obviously we've only been streaming for a little over a month, and you've had experience, I think, creating all these videos for over 10 years. Is that right?
Probably 7 or 8. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's still a lot. So what advice would you have for us as youngling streamers?
That I think that you have the best possible direction right now. There are, of course, many ways to approach doing videos, and in between platforms like YouTube and Twitch, which are like the two primary. And one of the easiest ways to generate content for, like, because there's two ways to approach audiences. There's the streaming, which is much more interactive, very direct. It brings people in. As you can see, we have Face Tat talking in the chat and engaging with us, even though I'm doing an interview, so I'm not engaging as much as I would be as a streamer. But it also gives you the chance to cut out stuff that you experienced and then put it onto other platforms, in order to take advantage of something that I'd call the long tail. Because, like, streaming itself, when you produce a stream video, it's much more ephemeral. People will experience it, and although they might come back and watch it later without some sort of goal, they're probably just going to put it on in the background or watch, like, the thing, because a lot of the time they come to it because they want to interact with you. And if you're not actually there interacting, it's not quite the same as having a TV show, and they're not very focused, and so it's less likely that people who weren't there when the stream was going on are going to go watch streams from the archives. And so I know that you clip stuff out, and that's very important for, like, a continuing engagement. And a thing to do with that is to pass it on to YouTube and make a YouTube channel to start putting much more very focused content that you could then introduce and turn into, like, give it some sort of, I know, like, marketing term, like, give it some sort of branding, you know,
Yep.
like a, and by that I mean a structure that people are used to, a beginning and an end, so that, like, they know that your video has started, and like that it's you, and like you've done a really good job of that with your Twitch channel, because you've got your layout, you, when you say hello, the way that you look on your cameras and stuff like that. So I feel like you're off to an excellent start. Like, you've got all of the foundation that you need. And not only that, I know that you're off to an excellent start, because, like, it sounds like Ape started with a whole bunch of random equipment that he was going to use for other purposes, that, like, more professional purposes. Here I'm saying that gaming is not professional. And it
You're
looks gorgeous.
Professional in that Twitch channel.
Yes, here, let me do another shout out for Ape. For anyone who happens to be watching, you should follow them. They come on at 9:45 every night on Pacific time, and they stick around between 2 and 3 hours, depending on what sort of nonsense is going on in Guild Wars 2. Oh, and I think that we had another question from FaceTag. Question for Sam. Do you think the new expansion will be like Factions? That will require a little bit of an explanation of what Factions is.
So Factions was the second expansion in Guild Wars 1, and it took you to a different continent far to the south called Cantha. And Cantha had a lot of different Asian kind of, what's the word, influences.
Yeah, cultural influences.
Yes, cultural. So the architecture, you know, was a mix of, you know, like Korean and Japanese.
Chinese.
Yeah. So anyways, I think for the longest time in Guild Wars 2, people were calling for Cantha. We want to go back to it. And of course, we went back to Ilona first. And finally, it is coming back. Do I think it's going to be the same as what I remembered? No. I feel like they've mentioned that the Jade Sea, which was a major landmark in there, has now not melted, but it's no longer a solid crystal. I do want to know what the tribes are up to now, you know, if they even survived or if they were completely wiped out by something and something new is in its place. And Kaining City might actually have that, you know, kind of a social commentary on class structure. So that would be cool to see again as well. So maybe a lot of the same, hopefully a lot different.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interview with ApeJunk and Sam today. I put the shout out for their live stream in the chat. You should sub to them and go check them out when you can. And I'm going to line up so that I can actually get sort of a shot where I'm standing between the two of you. Yeah, that looks great.
Do we need to be bigger?
No, although that would be hilarious. Go ahead.
Well,
Need to get bigger. Oh my god.
Size. There's
Yes,
a Norn.
well, and that's interesting too, because the Norn are actually supposed to be huge, like gigantic. And in this, they're just kind of like, they're like 7-8 foot tall humans rather than like gigantic. So thank you for coming along, everyone. This has been an MMO Anthropology interview with ApeJunk and Sam, and I am your host, Amarist. And now we are going to run off and probably explore the world such as it is. Talk to everybody later.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you play online games? Do you have Skype? Then we'd love to interview you on Massive Online Anthropology. Join the fascinating thousands who've spoken about their online gaming experience and be the envy of all your friends. Or at least get the MMO Anthropology Geek Merit Badge. Sorry, no t-shirt. See you then!